he just went low. He's in his head. He's in his head. He's open. His head wide open. Cracked open in the face.
Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Mario Tesla 100 back again with the How's My Team series. We're here for another episode. It's Saturday morning, obviously the day of the Elimination Final for the Wanderers, but first we've got to talk about the Titans because they played on Friday night. So things were looking bad for the Titans there, especially in the first half. It was down 20 points to nil for most of the first half. Ended up being 20 points to 6 at halftime, but they come from behind and won 24-20 against the Newcastle Knights. They did the sweep of the two games against Newcastle this year. And 24 points unanswered against the Knights. The Knights defense was not great towards, especially the second half. But the Titans really turned it on. I was obviously at work. I was obviously getting score updates with the games in particular, but it was not looking great. I almost was in a situation where it got to halftime and was like, I'm not going to be looking at my phone anymore, and was not happy with the result, obviously, at halftime. If you hear some stuff in the background, I apologise. The dishwasher is on. It's very loud, especially when nothing else is on. And I've also got the washing machine on as well, but you won't be able to hear that nearly as well. But if you hear some water spray and stuff like that, it's the dishwasher. But yeah, 24 points to 20 away from home in Newcastle. So fantastic result. Obviously, Jaden Campbell coming back. He was slowly getting used to things again after his injury. We had some good players playing last night, and it was one of those situations. It was one of those games that ultimately is ultimatum. I think from what I hear, the effort was more there. A couple of tries are really, really good as well in terms of team structure and team play from the Titans. So that's great. So with that win, yes, we do move up a spot to 15th. Obviously, the Panthers dropped to 16th, but they have not played their extra game yet. Do they have the bye? But yeah, so it snaps a 5-game losing streak. Obviously, we hadn't won since 2016 in Newcastle, so we break that streak as well. So we only move up one position, obviously, because of our for and against. It's minus 84. Now, considering we only won by 4, so that didn't really put a dent in any of that. But obviously Newcastle are in front of us because they've got better for and against than us. Then it's the Dragons above them, as well as the Dolphins above them as well, who won on Thursday night in a close one against the Eels. So it is a situation where we only moved up a position, but it is better than nothing. The Rabbits also won last night against the Broncos. The Broncos are down in 6th right now. But, of course, we play the Canberra Raiders next week in Canberra. Obviously, Canberra have a huge game this coming week with the Bulldogs. Actually, I think that might be today's game, if I remember correctly. But yeah, big game for them. I think they're playing at Sydney, I think. But either way, it's a top 4 clash. Because, actually, it's top 2 clash. It's first versus second. Because obviously the Storm lost last week against the Canberra Raiders, so they put them 2 points adrift from the top three. So, and I believe the Warriors are still going to play as well today as well. I think they're against the Dragons, I believe. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Canberra Raiders, especially if they lose this week against the Bulldogs. It could be a situation where, it's a winner versus a loser, and it would not be a good time for the Raiders to lose. But in saying that, it also isn't a bad situation if the Bulldogs do lose as well. If they lose in a close one, the Bulldogs will still be on top because of for and against. So if they lose by only say 2 or 4 points, the Bulldogs have got 94 in the positive in terms of points differential. So compared to the Raiders 60, so they're in front of them by 34 points at this point in time. So if they even make a dent somewhat of the Raiders themselves, making a dent in that 2, 4, 6 points or whatever, it's not going to matter too much in terms of positioning. Obviously with the Warriors, they could still, it depends on how much they would win by, but they'd have to win by 90 to go to the top of the table because they're in third, but they'd be on the same points as if the Raiders won. It'd be the Bulldogs, the Raiders, and the Warriors. But obviously the Warriors and the Raiders, even if the Raiders do win, they'd stay in second as well because they're plus 60. So they'd still be in the top three. It'd be the Bulldogs, Raiders, and Warriors, but they'd all be on the same amount of points. So obviously it would go matter into next week. And then obviously the Storm with 12 points at the moment. So they're 4 points adrift from the top and 2 points out of the top 2 and 3. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting week to see. Obviously, like I said, Snap's 5-game losing streak. And it's going to be interesting to see how we play in Canberra because we play okay. We've played okay there in the past. We haven't won that many games at all, I think, in Canberra. But obviously, this is the second game we've played against Canberra. And then we have the bye after that. So it's not a bad situation to go down there and then take the bye and then go back home to play the Storm, which is sort of the week after. Obviously Origin is coming up as well, so obviously a few players were showing out. Bo, I think, played a decently good game. AJ, if he's still eligible, I'm not 100% sure because he's pledged his allegiance to playing for England in the World Cup coming up and playing for England for international games. So I don't exactly remember how the rules work in terms of, because I think they're a tier 1 nation, I think. So he might not be able to play Origin, but at least Bo's looking good. Tino's looking decently good. He performs a lot, and especially when it was Tino's 100th game for the Titans and Mo's 150th game as well in the NRL for this. So winning it for both of them was great, and they both showed out as well, both Mo and Tino. So they might end up having spots for the Queensland State of Origin side, which again is not that far away from actually being announced. I would imagine being the next week or so, because I think the first game is the last week of May, and it's the Wednesday of the last week of May, if not the first week of June. So yeah, looking at the Storm game, I think might be the weekend after State of Origin, because that's the 31st, I think, if memory serves me right. If not, obviously, then it'd be the Broncos the week after, which would be the 7th on the Saturday. But yeah, it's not a bad spot to have the bye. Obviously, that's our second bye, and then we have the third one at round 18, and then, yeah, we go 9 games straight after that, after our last bye, to try and fight for finals. But we're not in a good position right now to fight for finals. We're still not completely out of the race yet, but we got to win a lot more games than we're losing now, and we've put ourselves behind the 8 ball because obviously a record of 3-6 for the season is not great. Obviously, it can be improved. It's not a situation where we can't turn things around. I have seen teams that have gone from the bottom to the top very easily. But this season, especially, it's one of those ones that anything can happen. So we'll see what happens. But obviously, next week against the Raiders, big game for both. I'd say more so for the Titans than it is for the Raiders. But for the Raiders to keep up in the top four, especially if they lose today against the Bulldogs, it's a big game for them as well to stay in that top four, because they've got a few teams on the fringe. Obviously you got the Melbourne Storm in fourth, you got the Sharks in fifth on 10 points, so they haven't played yet. You've got the Broncos as well, who obviously lost last night. But they're on 10 points, Seagulls are on 10 points, and the Tigers, as well as the Cowboys, the Roosters, and then the Rabbitohs, who won against the Broncos last night, are also on 10 points as well. So there's not that many teams that are behind them in terms of points right now, because you're going from fourth, which is in 12 points, which the Storm haven't played, obviously, at this point in time. And then fifth right down to 11th are all on 10 points. So literally, I know some of those teams have already played. Obviously, the Broncos and the Rabbitohs have. And also the Dolphins, but they're on 8 points. So they're in 12th on 8 points. They also played on Thursday. So when it comes to those teams, if the Raiders drop today against the Bulldogs, obviously the Bulldogs will jump 4 points in front of them and possibly 2 points in front of the Warriors if they win. But yeah, they jump ahead, and the Raiders, it'd be in a situation, especially next week, if they lose against the Titans next week as well, they could drop out of the top four. Which wouldn't be ideal for them, because their side, is ranging anywhere from being in top four right down to missing the 8 completely. But they have a really good list. So it's going to be interesting to see in the next couple of weeks, because obviously the bye is coming up in a perfect time after that Raiders game, because I expect that game to be very physical, like it was with the first game. Maybe not, obviously, the Raiders playing better football, especially in the first half, unless they play our type of game and make a few mistakes during the game, then I would imagine that there's a possibility that Titans could boil over and win against the Raiders, but it's a big game for especially the Titans. But yeah, the bye coming after that game is not a bad situation. So we have to wait till Sunday next week to see that game. We'll see how the Raiders and the Titans go. Obviously, we'll see how the Raiders go today. But yeah, 24 points to 20 over the Newcastle Knights do the sweep of the 2 games against Newcastle, home and away. So yeah, snaps a 5-game losing streak. Can't complain with that. So it's Sunday morning, and we go through a little bit of heartbreak because the Wanderers went down 2-1 in the Elimination Final against Melbourne Victory. Victory did score first. They scored in the first 7 minutes of the game, and basically the Wanderers were playing on the back foot pretty much the entire game, for most of it. Though I think towards after we scored an equaliser from Saxford, the momentum was definitely in our favour in that game in particular, in the Wanderers, but they just couldn't maintain possession, I should say, in the Victory half, and the Victory defence was pretty honourable last night because it was a mess. It was a mess, and especially the second half. Like, I know that obviously we had our opportunities at goal in the second half, as did Victory, and Victory just didn't have to score because they scored not too long after we equalised, and it kind of broke our hearts a little bit. So it's a situation where it's another season goal begging, and again, that's why I mentioned last week if we could get second, that would be a great result because we wouldn't have to go through this. We'd have the second game to fall back on if we ever lost, like say like a 1-goal loss. You can obviously make up for that in the second leg. Yeah, you might be playing, possibility of might be playing away from home, but at least you'd have a chance to make up for it. The elimination finals is one and done. And it's the same for Adelaide United. They lost against, I guess, Western United as well. So it's pretty much a full Melbourne affair apart from Auckland FC in the semi-finals. Western United go up against Melbourne City, and Victory end up going against Auckland FC in the semis next week. So it's funny because the women's Victory team is going to the grand final because they won 6-2 on aggregate against Adelaide United. The other game for the women is still going to play between Central Coast and Melbourne City, which was tied at 2-2. Was drawn in the first game last week, so pretty much all to play for them. Obviously, Melbourne City in the women's team, undefeated season during the regular season. They still haven't been defeated yet. Central Coast have a possibility to go to the grand final if they can knock off a team that hasn't lost all season. But yeah, so that means that with this, I'm barracking for Western United to either win their second A-League trophy or Auckland to win their first one. As much as it sucks because Auckland FC have been on top pretty much the entire season, I guess you can't take it away from them because they've played well and they've only lost 3 games, and even then technically only lost 2 games because, well, against Western United, they didn't, like Western United did beat them, but they didn't play all of their starters in the last game of the regular season, Auckland FC. So, they had a chance to rest people up because they already had the Premier's plate in their hands with obviously the draw between Adelaide United and Melbourne City the week before. But yeah, it's very disappointing, and it's like I said, if the Wanderers could make second, that'd be great. You'd skip past the elimination final and go into the 2-leg semi-final situation because that fares a lot better. And we're waiting again for another finals win because it's been 10 years now with last night's loss. So, and especially at home, it's very disappointing when you have like a whole bunch of home supporters. Like, I knew that the unbeaten run was going to end at some point. I was hoping that possibly could have been next week, because or the week after in the semis, because at least then it would have kind of mattered, but kind of didn't matter at the same time. It would have depended on how heavy the loss would have been. Obviously, it would have been against Auckland FC, just due to the fact that Adelaide United didn't win against Western United rather. But the way that the seeding is, it's a bit weird because it's like the highest seed goes to play second and then the lowest seed gets to play first, where I thought it would be the opposite. Where it's, obviously you give advantage for the team that plays first and go for the highest, and, like the actual advantage would be kind of between the top two, where yes, you go to the second week of finals, so obviously like week 2 and week 3, because obviously the double leg, but having it kind of in a situation where, obviously second is lower than first, so first, gets the team that's higher in position as their seed, and then the lower team be for the team in second, because at least then it would be kind of balanced, but it's the opposite. So it's the team in first plays the team that's lowest, and the team in second is the team that plays the highest, which is strange. I would have thought it would have been the other way. It kind of makes sense it would be the other way, but I don't know. I guess not. So I'll still be watching the rest of the season. Obviously, I'll be going for either Western United to win their second A-League trophy or Auckland to win their first in their inaugural season. So unfortunately, that means the Wanderers finish in fourth and are out in the elimination final, whereas the women obviously got the wooden spoon a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, A-League season done for the Wanderers, but yeah, we'll see who lifts the Premier's plate. Obviously Auckland FC lift the Premier's plate. Who will win? Obviously the A-League trophy at the end of the season in the grand final. We'll see who does that. It's down to 4 teams now, most of them from Melbourne, one of them from New Zealand. I'm hoping it's New Zealand. If not, obviously Western United, because they've only won one, and again, yes, it's only because it's a suspension team, but Melbourne City have won a couple already, and Melbourne Victory have won pretty much. I think they're at the top. I don't think they're tied at the top anymore. I think they're at the top, so they've won enough. And partially because obviously Victory knocked out the Wanderers as well, but you know, I kind of hate Victory with the fact that they've won so many. So I'd rather like a team like Western United that have only won one, or even if it got to a situation where it was Melbourne City and Melbourne Victory, I'd rather Melbourne City. As much as I hate like Manchester City teams kind of winning all the time, I'd rather Melbourne City, because obviously, you know, it would be a good game if it was a Melbourne derby for the grand final. I don't think it will be though. I think that ultimately, like as good as Victory played last night, again, if Auckland are on their A game for both games, especially they'll do it especially for home. They will do it for the home game on the second leg when they go to New Zealand. But Auckland have had the week off. They've had a few players rested for a couple of weeks. They're in the firing line. They've only lost 3 games. That doesn't say a lot, but you know, Victory last night were looking like their defense was really good. Obviously, the attack of the Wanderers wasn't as strong as it has been on this unbeaten run. But their defense was decent. Victory's defense was really, really good. But against Auckland FC, I can't see their defense holding up as well against their team compared to the Wanderers, because the attack of Auckland FC is far greater than the Wanderers. Although the Wanderers, yes, did score the most goals in terms of total goals for the season, Auckland have just won games just by playing. Like they've won, you know, maybe 1-0 or 2-1 or something like that. Like they've held a lot of clean sheets this year. So I expect that game is going to be arguably. You'd think both finals are going to be really, really good, both semi-finals, because obviously second versus third in terms of obviously Melbourne City and Western United. That's going to be great. Like that's going to be. You would think that would be a really, really good game, like good double leg game, because obviously the teams are very close on the table at the end of the season, and the way that they've both played this year, and then obviously Auckland FC against Melbourne Victory as well, because Auckland just keep winning. So yeah, so 2-1 loss to the Wanderers, heartbreak in Wonderland, especially a home final. Like that's another concerning thing, losing, yes, by 1 goal, but losing at home in front of a caucus of a home crowd. Disappointing, to say the least. Well, it was a disappointing and heartbreaking loss on Saturday night, and I guess you can kind of feel a little bit of that sentiment with Monday morning, with Liverpool drawing 2-2 with Arsenal, just since the fact that Liverpool did have a shot to win the game, honestly, against them, and it was called for a foul. It looks maybe like it was offside. Was thought to be the initial call, but it was, I think, probably just a defensive misread from the Arsenal defender, and the Liverpool player kind of did have his forearm in his face and dropped him. So they disallowed that goal. But it was a 2-all draw with Arsenal for Liverpool. Not a bad result. Take a point out of it. It also actually leaves Arsenal in a really bad state right now because, as I said the last couple of games, like the last few times, that they've kind of dropped off a little bit because, again, it was a draw. They've lost a couple of games in the last few weeks, and they're now sitting 2 points in front of Newcastle United, who ended up winning against Chelsea last night 2-1. Actually, no, it might have been 2-0, and they had Chelsea had a red card against them as well. So they might not even hold on the second if they don't keep picking up points because, it's a 2 point lead to them. Manchester City, I was going to say Melbourne City. Manchester City is behind Newcastle by a point because they ended up drawing to Southampton, which makes Southampton avoid that history of having the least amount of points during a Premier League season, which Derby or Derby County, I'm not sure how to pronounce the name of the town or the city itself or the county, like the team's name. But it's either Derby or Derby. You can say a few things because obviously like the Kentucky Derby is spelled the same way, and it's pronounced Derby. But some people will say Derby because if you look at like the Sydney Derby or the Melbourne Derby, like El Clasico, and like the Old Firm Derby, Merseyside Derby, that type of thing. They say it in multiple different ways. So the English language, good job. So Arsenal 2 points in front of Newcastle in second, but Newcastle's in third right now. Melbourne City, there you go. Manchester City in fourth. Chelsea in fifth, 2 points behind Manchester City. On the same amount of points as Aston Villa. It's only just goal difference at that point. Then 1 point behind them is Nottingham Forest. Looks like they might have possibly lost. I'm not sure because they did drop. So I believe that they probably did lose. Then Brentford is 7 points behind them. So realistically playing for Champions League football, it's obviously the top five. So obviously Liverpool are not going to drop their spot. Arsenal, you would think, with 68 with 2 games to play, they shouldn't drop out because the team that's in fifth is 5 points behind. So it'd only be up to Aston Villa. So Arsenal could still miss if they lose the next 2 games. Their goal difference obviously is better than Aston Villa and Chelsea, but if they lose some heavy losses in the last 2 rounds, they're plus 33 right now, whereas obviously Aston Villa is plus 7, so they're going to drop like 20 odd goals. But so they most certainly they could still mathematically miss, but it would have to be some heavy defeats and wins for Aston Villa would have to win massively, and Arsenal would have to lose massively for them to miss. So their spot's almost certified as well for Champions League, and obviously it's not a great week for Arsenal with obviously losing to PSG in a very competitive game. We're going to say both games, so it's Inter Milan and PSG in the Champions League final, which is going to be a fantastic game. I'm not actually sure who's actually going to win that. I would think it would be probably PSG, but Inter Milan was a close game in the first leg of the semis for them with Barcelona, and they pulled ahead at the end, I think in extra time, I believe. So so they did well, but you'd think that PSG is probably in the state to be the favourites for the for the final, just in the way that they beat Arsenal over the two legs. So you would think that they'd be in for favourites, but you never know when it comes to those two. So it'll be a team that hasn't won the Champions League in a while that's going to win it, whether it's PSG or, which I think they've won it before, off the top of my head. And Inter Milan, I believe, have also won it before, but it's been quite a few years since they've done that. So, yeah, so 2-2 draw with Arsenal. Not in a bad situation for Liverpool, obviously. The max amount of points we can get at the end of the season is 89 now, with 2 more wins. Which kind of sucks because you would think it would be a 90-plus point season for Liverpool, but yeah, there's a few draws in there that could have been wins, but again, some of those draws could have been losses too. So, you take what you can get. It's more disastrous for Arsenal than Liverpool, because obviously they're only just hanging on to second by the skin of their teeth at the moment, which is 2 points, which, for a win, that's 3 points. That matters a lot. And, some of the teams behind them in terms of Newcastle and Manchester City can win some games, and they could knock Arsenal right off their second place porch. So not ideal. So the next game for Liverpool is not until actually my birthday, the morning of my birthday, so the Tuesday at 5 a.m. So they're the last game of the week. So we might actually skip Liverpool next week in terms of recording. We'll have 2 games the week after because they play Brighton, and then obviously play on the Monday morning on the 26th, which is obviously the final day of the Premier League season, where every team is basically playing almost at the same time. So we won't have Liverpool next week. We'll have it the week after, though. And lastly, some more good news. We get into a situation where we've talked about the Titans, we've talked about the Wanderers and their heartbreak, we've talked about Liverpool, we got to talk about the Giants, and they're back in the winners list. They won at the Cattery by 4 points, 105-101 against the Geelong Cats. So we were in Geelong. This was a game that was very steady. It swayed both ends for both teams quite a lot. In fact, they were in front in the first quarter. They were in front by 10 points heading into the first quarter. They lost the lead, and going into halftime, they were only behind by a point. Then they jumped in front again by 7 points, I think it is, at the end of the third quarter. I think that's the math. Yes, third quarter. Yeah, they were in front by 7. And then that lead ended up going back to 4 points at the end of the game. Sorry, I was just looking at because they've got the graph. Obviously, they don't show points, and they show the what's good thing about the specific AFL team apps, and I'd say the AFL app would be the same as well, is that with the scores, in terms of the lead changes, you'll have the graph on terms of what points the team has scored and where what the margin is at that particular time. So obviously with it would be major scores will increase. It's like a staircase, like an uneven staircase, where it tells you what the margins are for the teams, and obviously they're just going through in terms of the quarters, just to see it. It looks like it's a 7-point lead into the fourth quarter, and the Giants won by 4 points. So Geelong did have a chance to win the game multiple times at the end, but good effort from both teams. It was one of those games that obviously felt, in some ways, it felt like it was a little bit of a finals type of environment. And I'd expect both of these teams to be around the mix at the end of the regular season. So obviously, with Geelong being in seventh and the Giants being eighth, it was always going to be a tough game for a top eight side. We did drop out, obviously, of the eight until this game because obviously Essendon won against the Swans. They held on to their lead because the Swans were coming at them pretty hard at the end of the game. So it was looking like that possibly that Sydney would have won that game, but they did hold on. But with the win, we stay in eighth. We don't go up any further with percentage, obviously, because we might have had like a brief increase of percentage, but not by a lot, because obviously we won by 4 points in terms of the game. So we haven't actually moved. So we've stayed in eighth, which makes this game this coming week on Saturday very much important for the Giants and obviously for the team that we play against, which is Fremantle Dockers at home. And I'll be going to that game, or at least that's the plan anyway. I'll be still going to that game. So it's 4:15 in the afternoon on Saturday. I'm expecting to go to that game with my dad once again. We have tickets, obviously, to considering that he got me a membership for Christmas. I think I've already said this. I might have said this in the first episode or around the first episode, but he gave me a membership for the Giants for this year as a Christmas gift. And obviously with my membership, I can get 4 home game tickets at NG Stadium. We've already used one because obviously we used that for the West Coast game, and we'll be doing that for Fremantle this coming week, or at least that's the plan anyway at the moment. But yeah, so we stay in 8th. Geelong stay in 7th for right now. They could have jumped easily into 6th, just because Adelaide obviously won this week as well. Obviously, I think other notable games, obviously the draw at the end of this round with North Melbourne and Brisbane. I think North Melbourne had a chance to win that game, but they sprayed and missed an opportunity to win that. So they ended up sharing the points with Brisbane. So Brisbane are in front by 2 points on the top of the ladder. Then you've got Collingwood, Hawthorn in 2nd and 3rd. Then the Gold Coast Suns and Adelaide in 4th and 5th. Then Western Bulldogs, Geelong and the Giants rounding out the 8th, with Essendon, Carlton, Fremantle and St Kilda the next 4 down from 9th through to 12th. And then Port Adelaide obviously with their loss in the showdown, 13th. Swans are in 14th. Melbourne are in 15th. Richmond, with their win, jump into 16th, leaving North Melbourne in 17th with a win and a draw. And the West Coast Eagles are still on the bottom of the ladder with no wins and 9 losses. But in terms of, obviously, positioning, not an ideal spot for the Giants right now. Still in the 8, so still competitive, still playing there. It's going to be really congested in the 8, realistically, and it's looking like it's going to be really congested in the top 4 because obviously the Suns are in 4th, but obviously only by percentage because they're on the same amount of points as the Adelaide Crows, and by the end of the season I expect that's probably going to be around about the same in terms of margins. Like it's going to be probably the same amount of points, but it's going to matter on percentage. That's going to cut off the top 4 from the bottom half of the 8. So that's how close it's going to be, I have a feeling. But the Giants, obviously 4-point winners against the Cats and the Cattery down in Geelong, down at GMHBA Stadium down there. I think we actually won this fixture last year by the same margin as well previously. So not actually a bad situation because it seems like to be a game home away from home. Actually, has it still got it on there? No, it doesn't. but obviously Jesse Hogan with the stats, 7 goals again. Kind of repeating his antics that were present against the Eagles when they played at home. Obviously, he scored 9 that day. He scored 7 on his own. He scored 16 goals, 9 compared to 14 goals, 17, which it's probably the thing that kills the Geelong the most is inaccuracy, and it has happened to a lot of teams this year. Because even the Giants have fallen under that issue as well. So it's not just a Geelong issue, because we have seen it in other games before. But yeah, it's just one of those things. Can't be too upset. Obviously, I think it was like that in the Hawthorn game, actually. Yeah, it was 9 goals 10 to 10 goals 16. So the fact that the Hawks ended up winning that game with a 10 goal 16 scoreline and back a few rounds ago now. You can win games obviously with minor scores as well, but 14 goals and 17, not ideal, because you're translating that to 16 goals 5. Not ideal for Geelong. But 4-point winners, we'll take it. Obviously we've got a decent record down at GMHBA in Geelong against Geelong. It's one of those grounds that seems to be a place that we can win, obviously, as a team, because obviously, like I said, we did win there last year. I think it was a little bit later in the season, obviously, with that game in particular, and that game was important as well last season, and obviously as it is this season. So heading into the next home game, which obviously is against Fremantle Dockers, all the more important to win more games, because it's Fremantle, then Carlton, then Richmond, and then Port Adelaide before we play Brisbane away from home and at the Gabba. So it's an interesting month to say the least, because Fremantle being in 11th right now, Carlton being in 10th, Richmond being in 16th, and Port Adelaide being in 13th before we face the first place Lions, and then we play at home against the Suns the week after that before the bye. So interesting couple of games to round out June. Going to be some really tough games there. So if we can win against Fremantle, against Carlton, against Richmond, and in Canberra against Port Adelaide, we're in a pretty good stead. But at least if we can make the games competitive, win more games than we lose in the next month, the next 4 games, before we obviously face against Brisbane and the Gold Coast, that's going to be good, because obviously when it comes to Brisbane, when it comes to the Gold Coast, especially the Gold Coast this year, and how they're playing, because they're playing out of their skin, it's going to be interesting to see what happens in those 2 games, because obviously you got the payback game for the semi-final against Brisbane from last year's semi-final, and then you've got an expansion cup against Gold Coast, which, yes, Giants have won quite a lot, but obviously this is a different Gold Coast team that seems to be winning a lot more games and being a lot more competitive than they were last year. Obviously they were competitive at home last year, and that was the thing that probably saved them a lot, but they're very competitive at home and away, so it's going to be interesting to round out June. But 4-point winners over the Cats at Geelong for the Giants. Great result. And that'll be it for this episode of How's My Team. I'm going to pretty much go shortly, because I am running out of I was going to say running out of breath, but I need to drink some water, because my throat's a bit dry. Great result for the Giants, great result for the Titans, an alright result for Liverpool. It's not really mattering, and a pretty heartbreaking result for the Wanderers. But with all that said, thank you guys so much for watching this episode of How's My Team. This has been my Mentos 100. You guys have a great day or night, and of course, take care.